Showing it feels taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own rights. Rather or flee, we're ruling the game. Turning heads, yeah, we're making our own name. Living free, we're breaking the mold. Unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold. Watch us unfold.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Rooted in Your Confidence, the podcast where we talk about stepping into your power, owning your voice, and thriving in spaces that not often meant for us or we are underestimated in. Today I have an incredible guest who embodies all of that and more. Rebecca Engle's journey into politics started at age 17 when she interned for Congress while pursuing a degree in elementary education. She wanted to understand how decisions were made and how she could advocate for students beyond the classroom. By 19, she ran for precinct air chair, won with 55% of the vote. Yay, Rebecca. And broke the state record, proving that leadership isn't about waiting your turn. It's about showing up and making change. Rebecca's work is deeply rooted in education policy, special education law, and disability advocacy. She has been pushing for better support system for autistic children, students, serving nonprofit boards, staying active in political discussions, all while showing young women that they don't have to choose between their passions. They belong in every space they step into. Today we're going to talk about confidence, breaking barriers, and making room at the table for yourself without waiting for invitation. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Rebecca Engle. I'm 22 years old. I'll be 23 this year. I got involved in the political realm when I was 17 years old in 2020, right during the midst of the pandemic. I was angry about not being able to have a graduation, and I really wanted to figure out why, out of 17 school districts, why my school district was the only one that decided not to have a graduation ceremony. So I got active in politics, started watching the school board campaign races, and started making opinions.
Wow. That sounds like an incredible thing for a 17-year-old to do. And I'm glad that you were driven and knew exactly what you wanted and was able to speak upon it at 17. That's amazing. So you journeyed into politics, started at 17. That was bold. What gave you the confidence to step into that space where young women are often underestimated?
So my parents always told me to follow what I wanted to do in life, and I took their advice and ran with it. When I got to college in August of 2020, I was still 17 years old, and I was just kind of minding my own business, and I would walk past these different tables, different organizations, and the political ones always sparked my interest because of the outreach I had about COVID and the things going on during COVID. And so I decided to take interest in these organizations, started talking to people in these organizations, and then I made a few social media posts with my strong rooted opinions, asking for people to get along and for us to unite, which sparked a message from a congressional organization asking me to be a block walk intern for Congress. And I didn't have a car, I didn't drive, so I had someone literally drive me house to house and event to event, multiple people. Without those people, I'd be nothing. And I met a lot of people, but it was literally an Instagram message that really sparked my heavy involvement. Had I never received that Instagram message, who knows what I would have achieved and who I would have met.
What gave you the courage to make that? I know it was sparked by you wanting to, we all get fired up and we get excited about certain things, but that was a courageous thing for not just, say, a 17-year-old to do. A lot of times, any human doesn't take that leap of faith. Something holds them back. What do you think got you excited enough or got you pumped enough to be courageous enough to make that message, put that message out there?
Well, I've always had to kind of step out of my comfort zone in multiple areas of life. I grew up neurodivergent. I was nonverbal. I had to make the transition from self-contained classroom to a general education classroom at a young age. I was only 5. I had to make a transition from being the special ed student to an honors student. I constantly had to make big jumps with little to no control of my own. It was just, other people making those decisions for me. So I feel like when I made this transition, it was my own choice, but I was so used to jumping out of my typical box that it didn't throw me off. But at first, I honestly thought it was a scam. Like, I didn't think the message was real. And so I was like, can we talk on the phone? Can we make sure this is legit? And I just had a conversation and they were like, yeah, we followed you on social media. Your resume's impressive. And I'd never even posted my resume to social media. So I was like, what basis is that? I did have posts with me as different leadership positions and things like that. So I'm assuming that's what they were going off of. And it led into this conversation, and I kind of got to meet other people who were doing it. And I was like, hey, why not? I've jumped into other boxes before. Why not jump into this box? Not many people can say that they're interning for Congress at the age of 17. So I took it and ran with it.
Okay, very good. I love to hear that you just took a leap of faith and trusted yourself and your gut, and it seemed like you moved forward. What were some of the biggest doubts or pushbacks you faced, and how did you navigate them?
So many people in my life were like, you need to focus on education. You're an education major. And, I've always said that education is political. But many people were kind of like, you need to stay in your zone. I got told when running for office later at 19, I was running against a woman. However, she had a name that could be given to men or women on the ballot. And many people told me, this is, I'm voting for the man. They hadn't even met this person, obviously. They thought it was a man, but it was always, I'm voting for the man. I'm not voting for you. I'm voting for the man. And then a lot of the people would too doubt my age. She was only 7 years older than me, but people didn't know that because she never campaigned or anything. So it was common that people were like, well, you're 19, you're not experienced enough, you don't have the backing, you don't have the knowledge. And so it was either age, it was the fact that I was a woman that was often belittled, and then just not having a vehicle or not being able to afford a vehicle at that time was a whole nother battle. When I ran for office, I had one, but before that I did not. And I didn't have a license. So even if I would have had a vehicle at 17, I wouldn't have been able to drive it. But yeah, most of my battles were just being my age and the fact that I was a woman. Most people told me I didn't have the ability to protect myself while going door to door. Some people told me that I had to stay with a man because I was more a threat as a woman, which, I get it. Women have higher sexual assault rates, so that's definitely a possibility. But, it was always you're a woman, you're going to get grabbed or hurt or harmed. There was always the comment of, you're a woman, you don't have the power to do that, you won't have the power to do that, you can't do it. And then I would see other people who were my age, who were 20, 21, 22, so a little older than me, who were men, who were getting endorsements for precinct chair, which isn't common, from these big level-headed figures like the city councils and the mayors and the governors and the whatever else. I was like, well, why can't I have that if they're getting it? And a lot of the time it came down to the fact that I was much younger, in their eyes, female. And I was an education major. So.
Yeah. So what did you do to combat some of the challenges you face? How did you navigate them?
A lot of it took ignoring and conversation. And I didn't even focus on the fact that I was a woman. I focused on my experience. I focused on what I knew. I focused on research. And sometimes it takes handing over your resume and handing over your successes to someone for them to see your potential.
That's how I feel like a lot of times we get so caught up in everything that everyone is saying, we forget to lean back into our own abilities, our own resume, where we are promoting ourselves and what we are capable of doing. So for you to be able to do that, that was amazing that you was able to. I was just recently saying it's like your pocketbook or your bag full of qualities or qualifications, and you reach into it. We reach in to get our lipstick, or we reach in to get something. When we need it, we need to reach into that bag and grab those things that made us qualifiers and that give us the strength to move forward and to go on. So that's amazing, and kudos to you. Said that leadership isn't about waiting your turn. What advice do you have for women, especially young women, who feel like they need permission to step up?
I guess a lot of it is, if we're not stepping up, nobody is. And this older generation, and I heard it best from a mentor last night, actually. He said, I have 1 or 2 more terms left. We need leaders like you to step up. We need people like you to fill my shoes, because after these first 1 or 2 terms, it's going to be down to you guys. And if you guys don't run, then the world's going to be hurt. And that was from a school board president last night, who actually called me to seek my advice. And he's ran 6 or 7 times now for political office. So giving him advice was kind of eye-opening. But, people will see the power and your confidence and your ability just by what you say and what you put online and what you advertise yourself as, how you walk into a room. And leadership starts with how you walk into a room. Are you going to be the person to speak and run the show, or are you going to be the person to say, oh, the 40, 50-year-old men have it?
Yeah, being able to stand up now and advocate for yourself and for whatever you're speaking to is so important. And for you to learn that at such a young age, that is so amazing, that you're not waiting for someone to step up and shift and turn you to make sure that you see where you want to go, or to tell you, we think you'll be good at. Because a lot of times women wait for someone to tell them good job or validate them. And for you to be able to validate yourself, that is an amazing thing. And to be strong enough to stand in it all by yourself. So that is a win in itself. In your experience, what are some unspoken challenges women face in political spaces that women don't talk about enough?
Harassment is a big one. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, both of them occur in the political realm. You have to handle both. Insults towards appearance, right? Men can throw on a dress shirt and dress pants and easily walk into a room. A woman has to find colors that match her hair, her eye tone, her skin tone, things that make her shine. They also have to worry about wearing the same outfit multiple times, the same dress multiple times, their appearance, their hair. Men can, comb their hair over and wear a black suit every day, and no one realizes it. No one realizes that they're in the same shirt or the same suit. Women, people notice those things. People catch on to wearing the same outfits, and they'll call you out on that. They worry about things. They point out things that have nothing to do with your success, your talents. They can point out little things. And then, of course, I think when you get to the top of politics, there's always you got out with men and you went out with older men and you messed up your way to the top. Or a lot of people, we've seen comments like that from leaders like, Kamala and other political leaders. We've heard once a woman gets to the top of a political realm, whatever party you stand with, it's immediately an attack towards who you integrated yourself with. And if they were men, we don't look at what a woman's accomplished. And I feel like that's the biggest problem we run into. It's like, how did you get here? Oh, you did it with men.
You're absolutely right. I think there's so many biases against women when they start to move. Like you said, just the fact, the way you comb your hair, the way you dress, the way you show up, no matter how intelligent you are, and for you to be able to push past that and to step in and just be you and still show up in that area. That's an amazing thing in itself, for you to still stand and still not allow it to affect how you showed up in those offices, in those political offices where you were a young woman. There were other women, but you were so young, and that was a task in itself, just to be able to stand around all of these seasoned veterans, as I would say, and be able to hold your own. Many of my listeners are the only or one of few women in their workplace. What strategies that helped you assert your voice in those rooms when you were outnumbered? So what strategies would you use?
I will be 100% honest. I did, seek out resources like things like this podcast. I seeked out other women that may live across the world in the field. And sometimes I just had to swallow my fear and get up and grab the microphone and speak out. And Sometimes that microphone was met on the other side with boos, or she doesn't know what she's talking about, or, there would be a social media post about it that night, or there would be another attack. But at the end of the day, someone else was on the other side agreeing with me, and they would come to me at the end of the day and they would say, thank you for saying something, or I agreed with you. And they may have not been allowed enough to use their voice. And sometimes that was a man that agreed with me. But sometimes it's just swallowing your pride, swallowing your fear, and going up there and raising your voice. Because when a woman raises her voice, most men will back down to it. You won't see it until it happens.
That is so true. Me having been the first or the only in most rooms, and still to this day, because of I worked in structural maintenance unit. And I remember when I first started, I was younger, because I've been in the field for over 25 years now. That's what men used to do. They used to talk louder, or they would interrupt you, or they would ignore what you were saying. So for you to have the courage and the confidence within yourself at such a young age, that is a relief to see that you didn't allow those things to hold you back, and you sought out allies. And that's what I teach my clients, to first seek an ally within yourself. And it seemed like you had that. You had the self-confidence. You had the ability to lean into yourself and push forward because you believed in yourself, and that you had your own way of validating you by your accomplishments. Then you were able to find those who really could support you. So I think that's a wonderful thing that you were able to do that, and that you still moved forward in your career. And it seems like you didn't choose between education and politics. You found a way to integrate both. How did you manage multiple passions without feeling pulled in too many directions?
I think a lot of it is, as I said earlier in this recording, is education is political. There's students every day that are navigating policies that have failed them. There are teachers navigating policies that have failed them. There are administrators, navigating policies that have failed them. And I said this on a post last night, but when I go into a classroom as an educator, there are 15 to 25 kids that are affected by what I put on their paperwork, what I put on their academic successes, what I put down for them. And that commentary and those things and those accommodations, those modifications, whatever I'm doing to the curriculum to make life easier for them as narrative children, is playing a role in a later statistic. And that statistic will be used for political gain, whether that be in 15 or 20 years, or whether that be tomorrow when we do a assessment. They'll look at that, and they'll policies and modifications and accommodations I put on a kid's academic record could keep that kid out of prison. I mean, you never know what you're doing as an educator that is changing a statistic that is affecting a long-term policy that's being placed in place. And I think the best policymakers, especially when it comes to education, are people that have experienced the situation that they're in. In order to pass effective education policy, you have to have been a teacher or be very, very closely related to a teacher. But I think the best policies for educators are passed by educators. And so I feel like remembering that and reminding myself of that is what has gotten me to where I am.
Well, look, you're doing a great job at it, and you keep pushing, and your work in special education, law, and disability advocacy is deeply important. So kudos to that. What moment in your career reinforced why this fight matters so much to you?
Both what happened to me during my time at COVID, losing my graduation, but also my early childhood experience. I was mistreated by educators. I was highly tossed around, and it was because of policies in place that were allowing them to treat me like that. There were no protections, or as much as there should have been, for children like me, which led me into the route of wanting to even do that and play with policy. And then there's been moments even as an educator where I've seen people have to educate people on neurodivergent children, or they've had to teach because of a certain policy, or they've had to implement a curriculum because of a policy. And when I see some of these things implemented, they do drive me mad into wanting to change things because I see how they're failing children and how these things are failing children or hurting children long term.
Yeah, because looking into the future, and like you said earlier, the children, the younger generation is our future, and we have to be able to understand them and give them their needs. A lot of times, I know even in my day and age, children were supposed to be seen and not heard. They weren't allowed to have a voice. So as we are educated, we know that children do have voices. They just sometimes don't know how to articulate what they want or what they feel, and having educators that can teach them how to express themselves, and those that have those challenges where they don't know. It's important to have policies in place to protect them so that they can show up, so that they can be good humans growing in society and bring forth all that they have inside of them without being nervous or afraid because they may not look like someone, or they may not feel that they have as much to bring to the table as someone else. So this advocacy that you're doing for children with politics is so important for them to achieve higher goals and for them to be at their highest level of themselves that they choose to be. And it just educates us as the generation older than them that there are things that we didn't know, and it's possible for us to create a different system that's going to help all children. So thank you for everything that you're doing. If a woman listening today is passionate about advocacy but doesn't know where to start, what is the first step she should take?
Well, first, put yourself in circles. Walk to those networking events with people, males and females, or just males. Walk into those rooms. State why you're there. State your purpose. Find people that are on your mission, regardless of their gender, and friend them, associate with them, make your message clear, and human connection, people meeting you, people seeing why you feel so passionate about this is key. You know, before I ran for office at 19 years old, I was in a meeting working on another campaign and speaking for that candidate. And we were talking about schools and education reform with this candidate. And I went up there and I spoke on this candidate, and I shared a bit of my childhood story and how he would impact kids that had a similar childhood story to me, or prevent that story from happening, the negatives of it. And people heard that story, and I had never been in a room with any of these people before. And all they told me was, you need to run for precinct chair. And I said, I'm only 19. And those are the first words that come out of my mouth. And it immediately put a pressure to my confidence. But there was a few other people in that room who said, nobody cares that you're 19, do it. And that night I signed the form to run for office. But had those people not been in that room, I mean, who knows where I would have ended up with that.
Oh, that is so exciting to hear. That gave me chills when you said that they pushed you forward, and even though you were scared, you did it anyway. That in itself is a win for you, a win for all that you're accomplishing, all that you're pushing through to get to the other side. That is amazing. So, and I'm just excited to know you for being courageous enough to step out, even in your fear. Because again, when working with the women I work with, that's what I teach them. Sometimes we just have to do it scared. And I know you talk about pushing doors open instead of waiting for permission. Do you have another moment when you just had to do something, when you just had to try it?
Yeah, I think during my term, I finished my term that June of 2024. I started my term in June of 2022. But prior to actually doing that term, my seat was vacant. The person who was in it decided to just disappear and not do his role anymore. And so I had to kind of jump in and figure out what the plan was. And June of 2022, we had our state convention, which is where all the people vote for legislative priorities, all the people that represent their precincts. And in order to make that successful, you typically need your precinct chair to be there to choose the people that are going to help the precinct chair at the convention in passing those priorities for the legislature. And we were in a bind, and I attended my convention, my Senate convention, which is before the big state one in the summer, and our precinct chair didn't show up. And I had to run the thing. And there were people from my precinct there, all men, who came to be selected to be delegates alongside me. And I had to look around, and we had to figure out who was going to be the presiding chair, who was going to temporarily fill that position for this meeting. And I looked around me and I said, I can do it. And again, I had 3 50-year-old men next to me. And they all kind of looked at me and they said, all right, you run it. But had I not said anything, one of them would have ended up doing it. And I would have never even had that experience for when I actually ran for office that June.
Well, let's go, Rebecca, for standing up, showing out, letting them know that you were there, making your presence known. Good for you. What is the leadership lessons you learned the hard way? Have you learned any leadership lessons and you learned it the hard way?
Yeah, I'm very, very opinionated. And I have very, very strong beliefs. I have very strong morals. And I feel like in doing that, sometimes I've had to step down from my loud, opinionated self and listen and hear out people and just be a good listener. And that's been something that's very hard for me, especially as someone who's very loud and outgoing. You know, one of my friends always says that's such a Becca thing to say, because I immediately jump in and stand my place in every argument, every decision, everything. And I feel like sometimes I've had to just stop and listen to the other side before I express my opinion. And I've kind of had to learn how to navigate the human mind that isn't mine. Because I feel like both as a woman and both as a neurodivergent individual, I tend to have no filter. And then it harms my leadership rather than making it effective, because I had to learn how to constructively critique rather than straight up attack. And I feel like that's something I had to grow on from the age of 17 to now, because running for office at 19, you have to mature quickly.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because putting yourself in the room with people that have been in politics longer, who have the knowledge of knowing how to maneuver in different settings, and you now wanting your voice to be heard. So of course, I think it's a natural, normal thing to do. You came in unpolished, and I think maybe that's what brought you recognition, being unpolished, being able to speak your mind, being able to be seen, and not having that fear of what may happen if you shoot straight from the hip. That's just my thoughts. I think a lot of times we don't do it because of that fear of what happens, but you wanted your voice heard, so you just brought it raw and uncensored. And maybe because you weren't so seasoned and then polished, you brought it and they were able to hear you, because a lot of times they don't hear us as men, especially in different rooms, because we come in what society says a woman should do, act like, and should sound like. But you came in just as you, so I think that was a win.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, tell me what's next for you. Any big moves or projects? And if my listeners wanted to get in touch with you, tell me all the things that Rebecca's doing and where you're going and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so right now I'm compiling an anthology that comes out this October called Through Our Lens, Perspectives on Disability, and it will have advocates, it will have parents, it will have teachers, it will have therapists, it will have many people who have worked with disabilities, and it will have disabled people themselves speaking on their perspective of life. And so that comes out in October. I plan to use that book to drive policy changes for both K-12 and higher education and adults. I also eventually will finish my master's this August in education policy, and hopefully will begin in the next few years looking to have an impact at a higher level in the classroom. And you can contact me on Instagram at re.02.20. You can also contact me on Facebook at Rebecca Engle, or you can contact me via email, which is 2002, like 2002, and then it's REB, like Rebecca, with an S, and then at gmail.com.
Well, I'm going to have all Rebecca's information in the show notes, as always. But before we leave, Rebecca, I want to ask you a question that I ask all guests before we leave. I ask every guest this same question because confidence looks different for everyone. What does rooted in your confidence mean to you?
I think finding yourself authentically and being able to take yourself from the little seed who's bubbled up, who doesn't have a voice, who isn't loud, who isn't out there, and being able to grow yourself and knowing that not everyone will support your brand, support your message, support your policy, support you. But at the end of the day, not everybody likes every flower, but those flowers are still growing, and those flowers started as a seed and they have a root, and humans are the same. We'll continue to grow and we'll continue to bloom, and not everyone will like you, but if you stay in your seed, you're not going to have any color, you're not going to have any mission, you're not going to have any purpose, and you have to find that person.
I love that. Thank you. That was beautifully said. I love that. And Rebecca, this conversation was everything, and I thank you for sharing your journey and showing us what it looks like to step up, push past doubts, and create change no matter the age or the background. For those of you listening, if you felt inspired by Rebecca's story, make sure you follow her work, get involved, and remember you don't need permission to lead. If you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. If you are ready to take the next step into building your confidence, check out the links in the show notes to connect with me. Until next time, stay rooted in your confidence and keep showing up as the powerful women you are. Sis, you don't have to twist, shrink, or hide. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued for exactly who you are. If this episode spoke to you, make sure you follow, subscribe, so you never miss the conversation. And if you're ready to take this work deeper, take my confidence quiz. The link is in the show notes. Or book a session with me to start showing up in your career and life with the confidence you deserve. Until next time, walk through the door differently, show up, show out, be you, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Strong and fierce, taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own right. Swagger on fleek, we're ruling the game, turning heads. Yeah, we're making our own name. Living free, we're breaking the mold. Unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold. Watch us unfold. Capture the moment, hold it tight. Every click, every flash, we're shining so bright. Through the lens, we're showing who we truly are.